Decathlon next. Here's Tom Hammond.
All right, thank you, Bob Costas. Joined by Craig Batsback and Dwight Stones at Olympic Stadium. Final event of the decathlon, the 1,500 meters. Dan O'Brien, after 9 of the 10 events, has the lead with 8,180 points. Boosman of Germany, Fritz of the U.S., Dvorak of Czechoslovakia, Hamalainen of Belarus. So Dan O'Brien looking for the title of world's greatest athlete. But the problem is the 1,500, which is the final event, is his least favorite event. It's reduced him to tears at times. And here is what must happen if Dan O'Brien is to be beaten in this last event of the decathlon.
Well, Tom, he says that for the 30 minutes before the decathlon, all he does is worry. He hates it so much. And this is a graphic to show you how much the competition must beat him by. In other words, Frank Boosman of West Germany must finish 30 seconds ahead of Dan O'Brien in order to beat him for the gold medal. That means that Dan would have to be further back in the middle of the turn of the last lap to be beaten. This is the first time in 20 years that an American decathlete has a shot as this close to winning the gold medal.
Dan O'Brien, the world champion, the world record holder, his father Jim O'Brien. And remember Dan and Dave from '92? That's Dave Johnson sitting with Dan's dad. They became very close, Dave Johnson and Dan O'Brien, during that advertising campaign in '92. Dave went on to Barcelona. Dan stayed home after no hiding, incredibly, in the pole vault at the U.S. Olympic trials, finally getting his chance at the Olympics. Now there in second is the young German Frank Boosman. What an incredible decathlon competition he has had.
If you're going to have a personal best meet, the Olympics is a nice place to have it. He just blossomed onto the scene in the '96 Austrian meet. Personal bests all over the place, as he has had today. Steve Fritz, who is right in the hunt, is having a good meet. Had a couple places where he fell down, but he's a strong 1,500-meter runner, and he's going to be right in the thick of things. Tom Dvorak of Czechoslovakia also. The second through fifth athletes are within 4 seconds of each other of personal best in the 1,500, and they all can beat Dan O'Brien only if Dan pretty much gives it up, which I don't expect to see here. Dan O'Brien proved he had heart in Stuttgart in 1993 when he had to stay close to make sure he would win.
It is difficult to overstate how much he hates this event. He's just got to gut it out here in order to win the gold medal.
Well, you mentioned that half hour before the race. He says things to him like, why am I doing this? Why should I subject myself to this kind of torture? And I need a new job. And he's worked on that from the mental side because he knows physically he can do it. He's never really had to do it, though, Dwight. This time he does.
And Boosman goes right to the front. Frank Boosman of Germany, who is bidding to overhaul O'Brien and win the gold medal, currently in second place, is in front. Steve Fritz of the U.S. is second. Dvorak is third. Then Hamalainen. After that, Zmelik, and Dan O'Brien at the moment back in the pack has 2 runners beaten.
All these other athletes know how much Dan hates to run this race. Dan has learned over the years. He's become very mature in this decathlon, very mature in each one of the events. He knows exactly what he needs to run, stays within himself. I would expect that he's shooting for something just under 5 minutes for 1,500, which would make all the others behind him run close to or at personal bests in order to challenge him for the gold medal. And in these conditions, that's going to be difficult. Their personal bests have been set in conditions that are not nearly as extreme as this, although I must note these conditions are nowhere as extreme as they were at the trials 5 weeks ago.
Edward Hamalainen of Belarus has taken over the lead. Frank Boosman of Germany back to second. Steve Fritz of the U.S. still third. Then it's Dvorak and Zmelik. And after that, Dan O'Brien picking up the pace just a little bit. And the trailer we should note here is Chris Huffins of the United States, running with a bandage on his arm, not doing well in this event, but courageous just to be out there.
And this is a guy who hates the 1,500 meters more than Dan O'Brien, if that seems possible. This is courageous. It's his first Olympic Games. He knows he'll be back here again in 4 years. He just wants to complete it. It's a very courageous effort for a young man who's just really come on the decathlon scene in the last couple of years.
2 laps to go. Dan O'Brien currently 6th place behind the leader Hamalainen.
He was about 6 seconds behind Hamalainen, about 4 seconds behind Boosman. So he's keeping alert. He's staying on his toes and watching that distance. Clearly they are widening the gap each lap, but so far they haven't established a sort of gap. We talked about 30 seconds between he and Boosman. Hamalainen needs to beat him by 40.5 seconds. And if himself needs to be 10 seconds ahead of Boostman to win the gold.
That's Boostman there on your screen. He is not running this 1,500 meters as well as he can. He's probably dealing with the conditions here in Atlanta. Quite humid, quite a bit hotter than it was in Austria in May when he set his personal best. Edward Hamalainen, the man in front, has really blown this decathlon in the last two events. He had a golden opportunity to put some cushion between himself and O'Brien, actually move up in the pole vault. He's a good pole vaulter, but he only matched O'Brien's height in the pole vault and then had a horrible javelin throw, some 15 feet under his best. And that is why he has to run so much faster, 40.5 seconds faster than Dan O'Brien in order to have any chance at the gold. At this point, seems impossible.
Bell lap, less than a lap to go. Hamalainen still leads. In second place, Dvorak. Boostman is back to third. Fritz is fourth. Then Zmelik. And Dan O'Brien now is in ninth place. Struggling.
But still, Tom, he's only 75 meters behind the people that he must stay close enough to. That's less than half the distance of what he has to be. He does have a look of concern on his face, and the front runners are starting to pick it up, but I will stress that he's on sub 5-minute pace by quite a bit. It seems impossible for the athletes in front of him to really take the gold from him. They will close the gap, but not by enough. But Dan is not having very much fun right now.
Thomas Dvorak of the Czech Republic, who came into this event in third place, has the lead. Frank Boostman, who is in second, closing on him. Hamalainen now back to third. Fritz is fourth, then Zmelik. And O'Brien continues to struggle, but now reaches down and starts to pick it up. Incredibly, Dan O'Brien is kicking. Dan O'Brien is moving up as Dvorak wins. Boostman second, Hamalainen third, but Dan O'Brien, showing the courage of a world champion and an Olympic champion, is picking it up. Dan O'Brien trying to sprint to the finish, and Dan O'Brien takes the title of world's greatest athlete.
Dan O'Brien's best 1,500 meters in 4 years. He hasn't run that fast since he set his world record in 1992. And as you say, Tom, a courageous performance.
10 events and nearly spent. Dan O'Brien denied his chance at the Olympics when he was the favorite 4 years ago. Those tears, joy and sadness. But what an accomplishment. He has proven he is indeed the best in the world and now has Olympic gold to prove it.
Tom, I think Dan might have come into this meet not only thinking gold medal, but world record, and he talked to his coaches, and they said, Dan, the score is not important. It's only the gold medal that matters. This may be your only and your last chance at this opportunity. Go out and do what you have to do. If you score over 8,700 points, there's a good chance that nobody can catch you. That's exactly what he has done, and he is the Olympic champion, the first one for the U.S. since Bruce Jenner 20 years ago.
And he will join the decathlon greats throughout history in the United States. Dan O'Brien.
And they're all gathered here to celebrate that 20th anniversary of Jenner's victory. Bob Mathias, Milt Campbell, Rayford Johnson, Bill Toomey, and of course Bruce Jenner.
And isn't it touching to see the camaraderie between the decathletes, and an embrace for Jim O'Brien, Dan's dad, and Fritz, who finished fourth, gives his congratulations as well.
Steve Fritz scores a personal best by 8 points and just misses out on a medal. But Dan O'Brien, he's finally, after the 4-year wait, after the disappointment of New Orleans in the trials, he joined us in the broadcast booth for Barcelona. Then a couple weeks after the games, set the still standing world record.
That's the way to finish, man. Look like a champion coming in.
Great job, man. I held on for about 2.5. Yeah, you did a great job. You did a great job. Hey, new Olympic record. It was worth that.
A sweet moment for Dan O'Brien.
His coaches, training partners, and family congratulating him.
Dave Johnson as well.
Mom. She's on the other side.
This stadium has seen so many magical moments tonight. The latest belongs to Dan O'Brien.
Of the Centennial Olympic Games is brought to you by Coca-Cola Classic and you. Together, refreshing, always for the fans, always Coca-Cola.
Dan O'Brien has joined the list of America's decathlon greats, winning the only thing he was lacking, an Olympic gold medal. Right now, he's with Chris Collinsworth.
Hi, Tom. Thanks. Dan, first of all, congratulations. You had a big lead going into the 1500. We all know how you hate that event. Were you still a little bit afraid?
I really was, because I hit that guy Busselman. He's a live wire. I didn't know what he was going to run, but I went to the practice trap, got a good warm-up. I came back and said, I'm going to run whatever it takes. And I was going for the world record of 4:35, but I just ran out of gas a little bit.
It has been a long 4 years for you after that no height in the pole vault. Can you describe your emotions then and now, the difference?
Well, I really can. This is so much. This is hard to explain what I felt like today, but I'm running around on the second lap. All I hear is USA, USA. I jogged on the road at home dreaming about that, but I got my family here, coaches, friends. It's very, very, very special. I'll never forget it.
An adopted child. Talk about your family.
Well, my family's great. You know, we grew up together ever since we were little. We all just felt like real brothers and sisters. They were here. I prayed with my brother right before the race, and God just got me through.
Has it actually dawned on you yet that you are the world's greatest athlete officially now?
Well, officially it feels great, but I wake up every morning, look myself in the mirror, and I tell myself that, and I got that from Milt Campbell, and I'm going to tell that to the people that go for it in 2000 or 2004. It's a great feeling, but it didn't happen by myself. A lot of teamwork went into it. Mike Keller, Rick Sloan, Moscow, Pullman, universities both, everybody in Clam Falls, Oregon. It's just fabulous.
Congratulations.
All right, thank you.
Tom.
All right, Chris. Dan had studied America's greatest, including Jim Thorpe, whom the King of Sweden told, "Sir, you are the greatest athlete in the world." Dan said, "The world's greatest athletes all had the mind and heart to win Olympic gold medals, and now, finally, so do I." Bob?
Tom, thanks.